Going passwordless, preparing your clients for a credentials-free future, and defining your geographic market. Stay regional or go global. That and the latest news and trends in the managed security space, coming right up on Cyber for Hire.
Building bridges between managed security providers and their clients, it's the podcast where MSPs, vCISOs, and end users take a united stand against cybercrime. This is Cyber for Hire.
All right, welcome friends to episode number 24 of Cyber for Hire. How's everybody doing today? I'm Bradley Barth with SC Media in New York, and joining me today on the other side of the Continental Divide is my co-host and partner in cybercrime, Ryan Morris, principal consultant with Morris Management Partners. Ryan, I returned not too long ago from the Identiverse conference in Las Vegas. Now, Ryan, I know we like to play video games a lot. Well, over the last couple of days I was there, I moved over to the Luxor Hotel where they have their own esports arena. And inside the Big Pyramid, they were hosting a Street Fighter tournament, which is one of the rare times, you can say, I really enjoyed watching people brutally, savagely murder each other over and over again and not sound like a completely depraved human being. It's like Digital Gladiator, but, it's funny. I know there are a lot of people out there, especially kids like my 10-year-old nephew, who truly enjoy, are like genuinely entertained by watching other people play video games. And I remember even one time being over at my friend's house with his kids, and they were laughing hysterical watching YouTube videos of people playing Mario or whatever. I think when I was a kid, I would find that a form of torture and maybe like a source, and maybe it still does. Give me the controller, I want to play. So I'm curious where you stand on this, Ryan. Could you sit there for hours watching other people play video games knowing that you never get a turn?
You know what? That was, I swear that was the question of the day when Twitch came out. When that service first came out, I was like, are you kidding me? That is, all that's going to do is make me more uncomfortable and more feeling like I am missing out. But honestly, it's grown on me. And I will say it happened because with teenage sons at home who play games that are radically beyond my particular dexterity. And, I don't have enough time to become good at them. Watching them with modern graphics and advanced cards and all of the engines that drive this stuff, just a hair short of the entertainment of watching a movie. So honestly, I would say it's grown on me in a way I literally never thought I could imagine.
Oh, well, how about that? That's interesting. All right, well, more on the Identiverse conference in a moment, but first, some news just can't wait, which is why we want to share what's top of mind today. So here's your headline, courtesy of multiple news sources. The Clop ransomware gang has been exploiting a SQL injection and vulnerability in the managed file transfer software MoveIt in order to steal sensitive information from the database environments of corporate users, apparently for the purpose of extortion. Victims have already reportedly included Aer Lingus, British Airways, the BBC, the government of Nova Scotia, HR solutions vendor Zealous and some of its customers, and more. MoveIt's developer, Progress Software, has issued a patch for both its on-premises and cloud-based solutions. Ryan, why is this top of mind for you?
Well, it jumps to the very top of the stack because of the scale and the scope of the vulnerability that has been exploited and the impact on individual companies, right? These are not small companies, and B, it's not just one or two of them. So obviously it comes up a big conversation when we get into something that's this big, but it stays top of mind because it is not a radically sophisticated exploit, nor is it a system that anybody would call, the most complex or the most, vital information resource that they have in their stack. This is blocking and tackling, right? These are the fundamentals that we always talk about. File, sync, and share applications are one of the very earliest things that we as MSPs were able to rationalize to our customers, right? You got a great big file. You do not want to just, mail a drive to somebody. You want digital transfer. You don't want to have to suck up your bandwidth. Is it possible to do this outside of the normal controls and limitations on file size in your corporate email system? That was a very straightforward and simple value proposition. And I would say, yeah, I can't think of, obviously there are many brands that do this. And so without getting into all of that, I would say, I don't know anyone in my working universe who does not have at least one, if not more than one, of these services deployed. They're very convenient. They're incredibly deeply integrated into the way we do our digital jobs these days. And they are vulnerable. And they also contain, I don't know, the crown jewels of corporate data in many cases. I'll say I felt an extra twinge for top of mind because literally the day that this exploit was announced, that very day, I sat my butt in a chair on a British Airways flight, and I had that sensation as I sat down in the chair of, great, now I'm going to have to get another new credit card. It's just one of those things that we deal with out there in the moving world of digital stuff. I'm not sure that there's a fast way to solve it, but I know for a fact that every MSSP knows technologically how to solve this problem. We just didn't. So back to the fundamentals. Let's pay attention here.
Absolutely. And this type of tool like Move It is a solution or a service that you're obviously going to see in use between a lot of company partners that do business together, like a managed services provider and a client, for instance. So a very commonly used tool. So something to really be aware of and be sure to take action on. Apply those patches. All right, well, that's top of mind for the day, but it is now time to move on to our InfoSec News and Trends topic of the week. Presenting our big idea, insecurity, going passwordless, preparing your clients for a credentials-free future. Now, for this segment, I actually had the opportunity to interview this week's guest in person at the Identiverse conference. So Ryan wasn't around for this particular one. In a moment, we're going to throw things over to that pre-recorded interview, which will take us to the end of Act 1. But then Ryan and I will be right back for the second half of the show. So, fellas, roll the tape. Well, it's been a big year for the passwordless movement, with tech giants Apple, Google, and Microsoft supporting the FIDO Alliance's efforts to replace conventional credentials with passkey technology. Still, passwords have long been ingrained into people's daily routines, so users may need some convincing to change their behaviors. And likewise, managed security services providers may need to persuade their own corporate clients that passwordless is the future. So this segment will examine some of the key breakthroughs and remaining challenges surrounding passwordless technologies from an MSSP perspective. And it's a rare treat for me to be able to announce that for the first time ever, I will be speaking to a Cyber for Hire guest in person, in the flesh. She is Christine C. Owen, director at the consultancy and managed services provider Guidehouse. Christine is a recovering attorney, in her words, who found solace as the zero trust lead at Guidehouse. She's interested in securing people, things, applications, devices, and the cloud, taking an identity-centric approach. Christine oversees and manages client engagements to provide enterprise IAM and zero-trust solutions. She learned IAM principles while consulting for an IAM program that encompassed the entire federal government, and she then moved into a sandbox teaching first responders how to secure their systems. Christine, thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks for
Look at
having
this.
me.
I can actually reach out
It's so exciting.
and shake your hand. It's amazing. Something not virtual for once.
Yeah.
So for starters, you had a panel session here at Identiverse.
I have one. I haven't done it yet. I actually want to steal your intro and use it for my panel session. It was so good.
Oh, okay. Sweet. Yeah, so it's a year with passkeys, featuring some of the major players in this movement over the last year. Yep. What would you identify as some of the most significant takeaways that you hope come out of this particular session?
So one of the biggest things that's happened in the past year that's like really exciting is that Apple and Google have started rolling out passkeys, right? So I joke and say that Christian Brand on my birthday decided to give me a big birthday present because I got to install passkeys on my phone, and so now I have passkeys. But the problem is that I don't have anywhere to use them very much, right? I can use them on the Google products. works, but I can't use, there's not a lot of reliant parties that are using them. So what I'm really looking forward to in the next year is reliant party adoption. And I think that's what we're going to talk about. That's why we have a reliant party on the panel. And then we also have the FIDO perspective on helping teach consumers to adopt. And then we have 2 major platforms. So it'll be really exciting.
All right, great. Well, there was also a session yesterday all about passkeys. And forgive my little cheat sheet that I'm giving myself on my phone here, because there's a lot of information here to go off of. But this session featured the nonprofit standards organization FIDO Alliance, and they announced some new initiatives around passkeys, and they also sought to address some of the lingering concerns around them. So some of the concerns that were mentioned were how safe is it to sync private keys via the cloud in an enterprise setting? Another one was, just are we going to be able to change users' long-term behavior after decades of implementing passwords? So with managed services providers, I almost imagine it's like a double duty, because you now have to convince your clients that this is the right way to go, and that they will be able to in turn convince their customers that it's the right way to go. So how is that process going for VCSO organizations, MSSPs, consultants, in terms of establishing a little bit more of a trust with your clients to believe in this technology?
Yeah, so that's something that I have developed over the years with my clients, right? So one of the things that I've been talking to my clients for years now is these passwords, they have to go. And every time we have some sort of incident, it's almost always password based, right? There's always something that happened. There's either it's a phishing attempt that they got through because there was a weak password, or because the OTP was really easy to hack through, right? So these things don't work anymore, and we have to go to some sort of passwordless solution that's also strong authentication. So luckily FIDO created something, and you also have PKI technology, obviously, that's still really good and really strong. And so with a lot of my clients, we talk about figuring out what their use cases are and how strong that credential needs to be if they go passwordless. So if it's something that, and we really use NIST standards, quite frankly, to figure that out, to do a risk-based approach. So if you, for example, have a privileged user who's doing some really high value work, maybe we secure them with some sort of PKI token. Whereas if you have a consumer who's just trying to look up their account, then in that case, a passkey is a perfect place. And guess what? You don't have to pay a lot of money when they forget their password, which I do all the time. I hate passwords so much. I never can remember my passwords. And then there's this in between, which is the general internal user. Sometimes they're kind of low level, and you maybe a passkey would work for that. I think we need to see how the consumer side goes first, and then and that's what I advise my clients. Let's use passkeys on the consumer side, and then we can start talking about how we can bring passkeys into your general internal users. Because the cool thing about technology today is you could use a passkey, but then you could use a lot of other device level signals to strengthen that credential that would make the that organization feel more secure. But right now, I think let's get more adoption on the consumer side, because as consumers understand how to use them, then general users and companies are going to say, hey, why can't I use the same technology to get into my work laptop, right? So it's a lot of fun. So right now, there's also there's different flavors of passkeys, right? And so you could use I'm not supposed to use this word, they'll get upset, but you could use a token.
Go for it.
A token. I come from a federal background. Tokens are the words we use. So you could use a token as a passkey, or you could use a multi-device passkey.
Yeah. Let's talk about this a little bit more in terms of some of the difficulties around establishing trust in the technology. Do you help craft the message for your clients when trying to establish buy-in amongst either the client's customers or the client's internal workforce?
Yes, the answer is absolutely yes. So I think because I have this attorney background, I'm really good at crafting arguments, right? And so that's what literally I feel like that's what I do. I'm basically a lobbyist for either a technology type, or I'm a lobbyist for my client to go sell this technology to different areas of their organizations, or I'm a lobbyist to sell it to the general population. So it's something that I really enjoy. I like to call myself an evangelical. An evangelical. I can't say it right now. Evangelical, I guess, is the word. I really enjoy going out and speaking about stuff like this, because I think number one, passkeys are like going passwordless is super important. And so passkeys is one of many ways to go passwordless. And it's a very important thing to do. I can't really emphasize this enough, how much I hate passwords. Like and you know, it's just so much easier. But the problem is that we have this lingering technology. We're going to have passwords for many years to come. So there's other ways that we can securely use passwords. And one of those is using, for example, a password manager, and then having going passwordless to authenticate into that password manager, right? Or using a PAM solution and going passwordless to get into that PAM solution. Of course, both of those products create and generate passwords on the back end, but they generate really long passwords that no one actually knows what they are, and they become slightly more secure until we hit quantum, but I don't want to go there yet.
Yeah, that's a whole nother can of worms that we can save for another day. You know, something that's going to probably go into the messaging to either the client directly or to the client's, again, customers or workforce. It's just what some of the key benefits are of going passwordless, whether it's passkeys or a technology somewhere in that vein, and just the idea of things like you're not going to have to memorize a million passwords anymore. You're not going to be susceptible to phishing, where even something with like using MFA, it's not foolproof. That can still be victimized by a clever phishing scheme. So talk about, you know, what's on the highlight list of the key benefits that you want to include in your selling points on the technology.
So one of the really important groups within an organization that you need to get on board is the service desk or the help desk, because you have to completely retrain them on how to interact with end users and how to troubleshoot them. And so a lot of the times it's very slow to adoption because of that service desk, and we have to teach them why we're doing this. So that's, you know, it's more secure. It'll make your life easier, we swear. And then we know that there's going to be a spike in end users calling during the early days of the adoption. So what we tend to do with my clients is we tend to also do a spike on our service end. So we help the help desk. So whenever they're getting calls, if they get an overload of calls, our team can come in and help that too. So we make sure that the help desk is covered during the first couple of weeks of a migration into a passwordless technology, or a new technology that's utilizing passwordless a slightly different way. And then after that, what we found is there's a huge drop off in service desk calls. And the service desk can work on other things that are way more important than dealing with silly, like, users calling in going, I can't get in because I forgot my password, you know? So it's a much easier solution for them as well. So we found that there's a long-term cost savings on the general user, like on the, you know, average Joe general user side. I found that actually normal people, they want to go passwordless. So yesterday, maybe I was at the pool and I was talking to the server. And so we had this big group. Maybe it was all the people on my panel later today. And we were talking and they were asking, what do you guys do? And so I was explaining in very simple terms. I said, you know, when you go to an app on your phone and you use your fingerprint to authenticate in, that's like the basic technology that we use. And we're actually doing this other thing. And she knew exactly what it was. She understood what Apple Keychain is because Apple did a really good push to their users. Her friend had a Google. She understood that there was a Google Passkeys because she had been offered a Google Passkeys. And she said, oh, you're getting rid of passwords? This is amazing. I don't like passwords. So I think the average user hates passwords. It's just getting them trained on how to use the new technology.
I think amongst all of the passwordless technologies that gets discussed, right now the hot one is the notion of the passkeys that Google and Apple and Microsoft have been supporting alongside the FIDO Alliance. It's certainly not the only direction one can go. There are other passwordless solutions out there as well. Whether it involves things like an actual physical key, or it could be something that's very heavily biometrics based. The passkeys themselves can use biometrics as one way of logging in, but I'm also talking about other things like where you might do something like for an e-commerce transaction, palm scanning technology, for example. So among some of those technologies outside of the passkey area that everyone's talking about, what are some of the interesting ones to watch right now? Which ones are showing the most promise? Which ones are still a little bit of an iffy question mark?
So actually, the one that comes to mind is both most promise and iffy question mark, because again, we need adoption, but they're verifiable credentials. So using, for example, mobile driver's license that's starting to become adopted throughout the US, using those as a credential to either be able to say, hey, I am old enough to go buy that alcoholic drink, or hey, I am old enough to be able to rent this car without extra insurance attached to it. And then also using that as a credential where it can go back to the drivers, the DMV, and say, hey, this person says that they have a verifiable credential from you. Is this true? And then they can say, oh yeah, I got you. You're good. So I think that I honestly, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be an MDL, but I do think that verifiable credentials are starting to become something that we're talking about, which is good. We've been talking about passkeys for a year, and we're going to start to see more adoption this next year because we now have the framework set out. So it's very exciting. But I think we're going to get there with verifiable credentials as well. And I think that that's a really good use case for citizens to get government services, because in that case, they have a government organization vouching for them and saying, that person is who they say they are because I did the vetting to say that person is who they say they are. So that's the one that I'm really excited about, partially because I grew up in the federal space. So I have federal and commercial clients, but the federal is probably a little deeper in my heart. And I think that that's a really, really fun thing that's coming. And it's something that I keep talking to a lot of people about. So,
all right, interesting. Zero trust goes very much hand in hand with
Yes.
identity and access management, and that's your other big area of expertise and specialization. So, how do you tie in the notion of zero trust to passwordless for those, again, clients who might be interested in a zero trust architecture? Certainly something that has become a much more popularized notion lately.
Yeah.
How does passwordless help you get there, maybe in a way that is more ideal than and more secure than a password-heavy environment?
yeah. So generally speaking, passwordless technology is MFA in most cases, and it also tends to be stronger credentials, right? So right off the bat, you already have stronger credentials that you give to users to be able to get into your systems. So number one, I think that zero trust is pretty much the same security posture that we have right now. I know that it's a very controversial thing to say, but hear me out. So we have lateral movement today in many systems, and we're trying to get rid of that. The first thing we do is we break up the network, we create microsegmentation, right? And then the second thing that we need to do to be able to really make sure that the microsegmentation works is we need to understand who the user is every time they attempt to get into an application or a part of your organization's network. And that we need identity and access management, right? So the fact that you would have a stronger credential means that you can trust that credential more more, that it's tied to that user. You probably would want to bring in device level signals, especially for internal users. And in that case, you can have a more robust viewpoint of that user because that user likely has habitually logged in, for example, on their work laptops. So there's probably a watermark, and you'll be able to see that if they're logging in not on their work laptop and somewhere in the middle of the US but they like live in, let's say, Costa Rica. That would be weird, and there's probably something wrong, right? So that's a red flag. So these are like zero trust really, in my opinion, does three things. One, we get back to that identity centric posture that we need to do because you need to know who is on your network and why. And then the second thing is that it creates that microsegmentation, so we get rid of lateral movement. And then the third thing is that with the technology today, we can have a greater visibility using analytics and other tools to be able to crunch the numbers quickly, either through the technology, or if it needs to get pulled out and put into a SOC, humans can look at it for other reasons. So I'm actually really excited about all that. I love it. I get so excited about it. But everything else, all the other security posture pieces of zero trust, it's all the same things that we need today: firewalls, encryption, making sure you have the concept of least privilege within your system. Those are all things that we should be doing today. So just adding a couple other layers, maybe modernizing your systems.
All right, great. Well, other than a few stragglers passing by here in the corridors of the ARIA Convention Center here at Identiverse, we've been pretty lucky that we haven't had a wall of people just come charging through and making all sorts of noise.
Yeah.
So let's not press our luck. I think we've actually managed to get through this pretty unscathed. So I'm going to move on from this interview, even though I'm sure we could talk about this all day.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to transition us to a segment that we like to call We Speak Geek.
We Speak Geek.
Now, We Speak Geek is our way of celebrating the geek culture that is so often associated with the cybersecurity community. Pretty much we all have something that we nerd out about. And, we like to get to know a different side of you a little bit by knowing, what it is that you're especially passionate about. And so, Christine, I ask you, how do you speak geek?
So I am a big follower of Feng Shui. So Feng Shui is the concept that it's kind of like acupuncture for your home. So it's the concept of there's 9 guas. The center gua is your health, and then there's 8 guas around there that support your health. And if all of those guas are in alignment, then your house is happy and it supports you in whatever areas of life you have. I really strongly believe this because from the moment that I feng shuied my house in 2019 until today, I have been really successful in my career, gotten some really amazing friends. Mostly, actually, a lot of them are at this conference, so it's very exciting. A lot of them
that's very nice.
Walked by, and I was like, "Don't talk to me right now." But it's been a really fun ride, just in general, right? To the point that I now am at the point in my life and in my career that I was able to buy a second vacation home that I'm going to rent out. And so I had to go and get a feng shui report for that home. So I have to show you the pictures too. But anyway, so what we have is we have the home type. What we learned in this is that it's bad for people and bad for money. So that's not good. Actually, my primary home is too. So what do you have to do? It says add a mountain outside to the facing of the house. Well, it's a condo. That's not an option.
Okay.
So you take I'll have to do is I'll have to take a big picture of a mountain, of a gorgeous mountain, probably Everest or something, turn it so that it's facing the wall, and then put a really nice picture on the other side. So that creates this idea of a mountain facing. Right. On the other side, actually where the mountains are, that's where the water is supposed to go. There's supposed to be something like 300 liters of constantly running water. That's not going to work. So I'm going to have to take a big picture of a big waterfall, maybe like Niagara Falls. Also put that facing the wall, and then put a nice picture over it. So then you'll never know. Throughout my house and in this house too, I have metal all over the house but it's tastefully done. You can never see it unless I tell you, oh, that's there and that's there. It's a lot of fun. Part of it is every year I get to redecorate my house because the guas change. So red is fire in Feng Shui, and sometimes you need extra fire in your gua, and sometimes you don't. So I go around and I take all of my pictures and I look around and I say, okay, well, this area needs more fire, so I'll take all my red pictures. I'll figure out where I'll put them on the wall. So first off, it's just fun to redecorate your house every year. But then secondly, your house becomes very supportive for your career and other things. So I love it. I think it's the best thing ever. I tell everyone, go get your house feng shui. Whenever they have issues, I'm like, oh, you have a leaky faucet? Oh, you need feng shui. Everyone needs feng shui in their life.
All right, real quick, with like the 45 seconds or so that we have left here, a client calls you up and says, not only do I want you to help me with managed identity and identity and access management, but I want you to feng shui my security operations center. What's step one?
So step one is walking in and feeling the energy. So I'm really big on energy. I know it's like super geeky. So I walk in, you feel the energy, and you say, "Oh, this is like there's too much energy in here." So you'll probably have to tone it down. You'd likely tone it down with some water that's moving, so that absorbs energy, or you might need to tone it down with balls of metal, which will absorb the energy. If you come in and it just feels icky, it's stale, it's not exciting, it probably the energy needs to start circulating more. Also, in a sock, like you don't have windows coming in, it's probably the stale energy. So you likely would need some red pieces. You would need maybe some earth and some I'm looking at some wood elements to be able to create the energy in there, and it would be strategically placed throughout that center depending on the guas that need it.
All right, well, great. Well, Christine, thank you for bringing just the right amount of energy and fire to our show today. Much appreciated.
Thanks for having me.
That's going to do it for the first half of our show, but stick around because the show's not over. In segment 2, we're going to look at our big idea in business, which will focus on the strategy of whether you should stay regional with your managed services approach or consider expanding globally and go international. All that and a lot more to come, so we'll see you in a moment on the other side.